Hello everyone. I want to welcome all of you on our next webinar of a DigiFOF series. Topic for today will be Design to Model concept and Scene to Model tool, and our presenter will be Michel Valge from BOC. Before we start with the actual session, I would like to tell you a few words about all the organizational stuff. So I'm your moderator. As previously, we are using GoToWebinar tool. All microphones should be muted. If you have any questions, please expand the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar control panel and put your questions into a chat window so that I can forward them to the presenter. You can select whom do you want to send your questions to. So when you send, you can select either to everyone or to me. And after our session finishes, I will forward them to Michel. So this is what we are going to do today from a technical point of view. And now I want to introduce the speaker. The speaker will be, as I told you, Michel Valge from BOC Group, who will be doing the presentation of today's session. So he will cover the challenges that are OmniLab concept, design to model. He will tell you about design thinking and storytelling. He will show you the Scene to Model tool, and then he'll make a summary, and afterwards we'll have Q&A session. I must tell you that I watched this session before because we did a pre-run, and it was really very interesting. So I'm excited to see that so many of you are here and that you can see it live. Now I'll give floor to Michel, and let us switch screens.
Well, thank you.
Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited as well to present. You already introduced the agenda very well, so I will start right away with the challenges addressed by OmniLab. So our general motivation when we came up with this OmniLab idea and concept and approach is that we have a problem in the digital age. And the problem is that a lot of businesses and a lot of new business ideas struggle with conceptualizing, implementing, and deploying new business models in the digital age. Now, just to give you one example among many is that, for example, customers generally want a high warranty of their goods that they purchase. But with the duration of the warranty, also the cost of the good increases. So what do businesses do? They offer long warranties at a higher price, or they offer periodic replacements. Now, one new business idea in the digital age could be that based on a new value proposition, that the parts are automatically replaced based on models and real-time monitoring. Now, just to illustrate this a little bit, you see here a demo example of a company that does exactly that. It measures the quality and performance of parts from the railway industry, and depending on how well these parts behave, they do on-demand repairs. So this is already a company that came up with a new business idea in the digital age. But the question for us was, how can we support this in general, and what is the general problem? Now, the general problem is that there is a challenge that to develop these new business ideas and business models, we need the expertise and insights of people. So somebody has to say, yes, this is a good idea, we can earn money with this idea, these are the customers, this is the value proposition, these are our other partners, and so on. And on the other hand, we need these intelligent environments like you saw in the railway example in this small picture. Some robots have to automatically maintain the parts and pieces and behave generally in an intelligent way. And both ideas are needed to produce these new business models for the digital age. Now, the question for us was, is there a sensible middle ground? Can we bridge these two worlds somehow, and how to realize this bridging opportunity and requirement. Now the problem thereby is that if we do this for each application, each idea on its own, it's a lot of work. So we have to do knowledge engineering to extract knowledge from all the stakeholders, define requirements, engineer these systems on a use case basis, and this requires a lot of effort, a lot of knowledge, and brings the huge potential for a misalignment and for projects to be not successful, and it does not scale very well because sometimes we cannot get the human resources to implement such a thing. Now the approach of OmniLab was, okay, we put conceptual models in the middle. We use conceptual models to decompose the human knowledge and at the same time extract from intelligent environments. But then the question still remains, is there a sensible middle ground between the human knowledge and conceptual models and intelligent environments? And the goal for us was to have a highly descriptive modeling environment for the communication of everything to everything. For example, service design and Industry 4.0. Now this brings us to the OmniLab concept. So this was the general idea, and we formalized this concept a little bit more. And you can see on the left-hand side, this is these are the domain-independent invariants that are employed in OmniLab to produce modeling tools and modeling methods and so on. But the interesting part, more interesting part as part of the DigiFof project probably is this digital product design lab, where we say we have a scenario layer for all the human knowledge and all these design activities, and we decompose this scenario layer on a modeling layer. And on the bottom, we have a proof of concept, intelligent environment, where we abstract capabilities. And all of that is framed by the manufacturing domain and by software and infrastructure. Now, this is a general concept that can be instantiated by different partners. So every partner can have a different focus, and this allows us a fine-grained structure where everybody can focus on what he is good at, but at the same time, it enables reuse of this concept. Now, from this overall concept idea, in this webinar, I will focus on the top layer. That is how to build models of design and human knowledge through design thinking and how to decompose this in conceptual models. And the way we do this is through design thinking. Now, design thinking, just to give a short introduction, I don't want to go into too much detail. It's a considerable driving force in the business world. Because design achieves purpose and business goals, it's a very human-centered activity and helps to break down these complex issues in the digital world. The main idea is that it is not a very straightforward thinking process, but a very creative thinking process that tries to understand the problem before deriving solutions. Some characteristics, so design thinking is very human focused, it promotes creativity and teamwork, it is done in iterative steps and in teams. It uses simple tools that are very intuitive to use for humans. It's, like I said, very agile and very iterative, and it produces a lot of tangible results. Now, there are many methods for design thinking, and the one I am focusing on now is storytelling. So storytelling is one method for design thinking, and it's essentially a human activity. We, as humans, we like to tell stories. So we use these stories to explain the interconnections among people and to engage with real human beings. Thereby, empathy is a really big part, and through storytelling we can express our ideas, our thoughts in a community. So not isolated, but through the interaction with other people. And storytelling also through this interaction becomes a very important tool for feedback. So because storytelling happens in a group of people, everybody is involved and thereby realizing this iterative process of prototyping that leads to a solution. Now for storytelling itself, there are again more versions to do this than just one. There is digital storytelling, visual storytelling, and so on. So so I'm going now into more detail on storytelling a little bit. One part to do storytelling is with storyboards. A storyboard is part of storytelling, and it can be used to visualize and organize ideas. The original idea of storyboarding came from the film industry, from Hollywood. It's quite old, from the 1930s, but it has been rediscovered in businesses and in companies who develop storyboards as a planning tools to coordinate projects, presentations, and business ideas and so on. The idea of storyboards is that we transform these innovative ideas into visual stories that allow people to experiment with changes in these stories and to come up with these stories in the first place. Now to do this, you probably have an intuition based on the Hollywood storyboards. You draw these stories, individual stories, on a piece of paper or somehow put it on a piece of paper and put it in a sequence, and in the end you get a story, or in analogy to Hollywood you get a film. Now one method for storyboards, for storytelling with storyboards, is with SAP Scenes. So SAP Scenes is an instrument to create storyboards, and it can be used to create storyboards about products and services collaboratively and iteratively. And thereby it empowers business leaders and professionals of all industries to shape their ideas and scenarios and create these fun and illustrative stories without any prior knowledge or prior drawing skills or so on. There are some ideas on how to build these scenes, so they should not be too finely grained. So each of these scenes should show one interaction that is relevant for a service or a product that is provided. The number of objects in a scene generally is not limited, but you should focus on what is really necessary. And the scene should contain just enough information to be understood inside and outside of the innovation team. And generally, you place many of these scenes in sequence, generally based on how they occur through time. So you order them by sequence in time. And as an intuition, you can think of graphic novels that behave in a similar way. Now, in OmiLab, we created an approach that supports storytelling with scenes. And this is our generally design thinking and the decomposition of design thinking to the conceptual modeling layer, and we call this design to model. Now, the general idea for this approach is, like I said, that humans engage in design thinking activities because this has a great potential for problem solving. It's a very creative, intuitive, and innovative process. It's based on their insights and on the knowledge of all the people that are involved in design thinking. And it's supported by these design thinking methods and tools like storyboards and like the SAP scenes. So, as I mentioned, the humans build these design thinking artifacts. They can use these SAP scenes, they can print them out, arrange them in scenes, and create from many of these scenes a storyboard. So this allows for, there are many methods, as I said, storytelling is just one. There is rapid prose, prototyping, collaboration, workshops with post-its, and so on. Now the problem is that this approach is limited. It's not as agile as it can be. It's not time and space independent. So it only the people that are available at a specific moment, at a specific place, can participate in this design activity. It's complicated if you have distributed teams of designers. It's complicated to consolidate their efforts. It's also very hard to trace the changes, the iterations that design goes through, and it's also very hard to put the designs then in actual into a business or into a automation. Now the question for us was how to overcome these limitations, and the answer we found is through digitalization of design. Now the idea was that we go from these haptic design artifacts that contain these innovative ideas that are created with storyboarding, with SAP scenes, that are these haptic results of design thinking, and we turn them into software-supported conceptual models. So these conceptual models can then be linked to enterprise models, can be extended by semantics with ontologies, and can be further decomposed even to allow automation and operation. So here is the idea visualized again. So generally, we would start with innovation workshops where people participate in design activities. Then we digitalize these new business models, these scenarios that people come up with in a model. And then we can link these models and transfer these models to actual enterprise implementations. Here is again the idea. So we start with building these haptic scenes and we turn them into digital design artifacts. Now how we do this is supported with a tool. The tool is called the Scene to Model tool. So in these tools, we print and cut these haptic figures, then we attach markers to these figures and record the playing field. We use a camera to record this and then a Raspberry to analyze the video stream. Now the Raspberry then does two things. It creates video streams for humans all over the network to view the design activities, but it also uses a technical solution to identify all the tags based on some advanced mechanisms. It does thresholding, and at the end it identifies the markers based on their binary matrix. So each marker has a unique ID and thereby can identify the designs. Then there is a pinhole camera model that allows to track the markers in 3D space. And this tool then, as an output, produces the position of the markers and implicitly of these haptic figures in 3D space. These positions are then converted in the Scene to Model tool to a 2D plane, to a modeling environment where people can further extend these models. Now in this modeling, through this digitalization into the transformation into conceptual models, there are also ontologies involved, so it's easy to enrich these models with semantics. Now generally, this is the outlook. The benefit is that after we turn the designs, tangible design artifacts into digital models, into conceptual models, we can crowdsource them, for example. So we can share them on Twitter and people can provide feedback on Twitter, and this feedback could be integrated in the models again. Or we can further decompose then these models and automate processing capabilities. So we could do verification over designs or reasoning over designs. But this is an outlook in the future as the project is still going on. Now, I would like to show you what I just said. I would like to show you this in practice. And for this, I will switch out of the presentation and go to a live view. So here you can see me. At the moment, you can see the setup of a design thinking environment. So this is a minimal technical setup that it is required. In the back, you can see a table that is used by participants in a design thinking workshop. So there should be space around this table so people can come and interact in this space. There is a camera that records this whole activity. There are these tags which are used to calibrate the positions in 3D space. And there are the haptic figures that I talked about that people in design thinking workshops use to create their innovative ideas of how a new product or service could look like. Another component is the, as I mentioned, the tracking of the tags with a camera solution. And this is done on this Raspberry piece. And I will now unplug the camera that gives an overview, and I will plug in the camera that records the design thinking workshop. So the camera feed will go off for a second, and we will see a different camera view. So it should be plugged in now. Perfect. Now this is what the camera sees of the design thinking playing field, and people can come and design here with these figures their innovative ideas. And then we will digitalize it and transform it into a model. And this is the second part of the tool. So the first part is on the Raspberry. It does the identification of the tags and streams via the network the positions in 3D space. Now we have a modeling tool, and the modeling tool can accept this 3D position and turn them into a 3D modeling environment. So therefore, we have to create a new model in this tool, a model for one scene. So I can create this, can name this scene. And then I can select to create a scene from a stationary setting. Now it might be that this fails because I just switched the cameras, and then I have to do one additional step. Okay, so because I switched the cameras, I now have to restart the tag recognition. I can stop this and start this again. And this is the technical background that is necessary to accept this stream of 3D position data. And now it should work. And this is what you can see is the current setup. On the table are two figures depicting a drone and a worker, and this was just placed for demonstration purposes on this playing field. And in the tool we can see the representation of these two figures. Now it is able to modify the properties of these tools, so we could rename them, we could add descriptions. It is also possible to place manually items in the modeling tool, so you do not have to use the haptic table in a workshop setting, but theoretically you could design these scenes in the tool alone. We can insert the demo text here. You can move them around, you can order them, you can make different versions of a scene and so on. Now to give you, I would like to do some more complex scenes, so just to show this process again. So maybe in this we start with an idea that I have. Oh, I will show the. So here is a figure for a house, for example. So I can place this figure on the table, and I can say in this house I have two people living in this house. So here is the first person living in this house, and I place them on the table. And maybe there is another person living in this house. I place it on the table. and maybe they sit at the couch and they think about what to do. And then in the tool I can create, of course I can modify this, I can delete it and so on. So I create a new scene model and I call it persons at home. And then it is possible to create these scenes from the stationary setting. And again, I have the representation. I can move this around. I can make objects bigger or smaller and more easily and time and space independently modify my design thinking results. Now I prepared some demo scenes to make this more easy to understand, for example. So here in a subfolder, in this folder structure, I already did in an internal workshop 4 scenes. So here you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4 scenes. So in the first scene, what I can see here is that there are 2 people sitting at home, and one person thinks, okay, it is boring, let's go out, and the 2 people, they move to a cafe out of their home. But what they forgot is that there is a deliverable, a delivery happening at the same time, and the delivery person arrives at their home but cannot give them the package because nobody is home. So what does he do? He can bring it to the post office, leave it there. But again, this storytelling should be used to define or come up or ideate some new business ideas. So that's where we come in. And we say, okay, now the delivery person sends a notification to the customers and says the package will arrive in 10 minutes. Please be available, or if you are not available, please tell me what to do. And then we have a few new options for these people that will receive the package. And for example, now this is a crazy innovative idea. For example, the delivery guy has a drone available in his vehicle, and if it's only a small piece, for example, a ring that the customer wants to give to his friend, then he can put it on a drone and send the drone to the cafe, and both will be happy because they arrived. The product arrived and everybody is happy. So these are 4 scenes. I don't know if this is a good business idea. I'm not an expert in business modeling, but generally there would be 7 people around the table using these figures to come up with an innovative idea how to produce a new service for their business. So this could be more scenes or could be less scenes, could look different depending on the business. Now what is also possible in the tool is then to create a storyboard, as I mentioned on the slides. So the storyboard structures in a visual way the scenes by sequence in time. So here you can again see a miniature version of the scenes. You can go to the scene, you can go back, and it tells the same story again of people deciding to go out, that there is a delivery arriving, that people are notified about the deliverable and asked what to do, and then the package is dynamically rerouted using, for example, a drone or some other means. So again, this is just my idea of a new business model. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. This is not the point. The point is that it's very easy to ideate these stories and to modify them and iterate on them. Now, what is also possible in the tool is that we link actual enterprise context into these design models. So for example, here for the delivery process, there is already a formalized business process available in the modeling environment. So I can link this modeling process here to this design model. Now these are just demo enterprise models, so just for demonstration purposes. but let's say there is a standard delivery process available that can be linked here. Now the same can be done at the other designs. I can link a user notification process that is then somehow automated to do the interaction via the tablet, or I can have an adaptive routing process that more formally describes how this adaptive routing is going on. And it's then also possible to automatically generate the process maps that describe which processes are used in these designs. Now, the benefit here is that once a design is iterated, it's very easy to identify which kind of processes that have to be changed at which points in the business. Now, I will also show you how to create these models. I will just delete the ones I just made. And it's a very easy process. If we click on Create Storyboard Model, the storyboard is created for the scenes that we have imported from the workshop setting. The same is possible for the process map model. I have to open a model. And then the processes are collected that are used by these designs, and then I can link these processes and further refine these models. Okay, so this is a demonstration of the Scene to Model tool, which can be used to support design thinking workshops, and in particular the design thinking workshops for storytelling with scenes. It can be used to digitalize the results from design thinking that are achieved in collaborative workshop settings, and then to further refine them and further process these designs. Now, this ends my presentation, and I would like to open the discussions for questions.
So thanks a lot for a great, very, very interesting presentation. I have two questions noted down. Several times you mentioned haptic. Could you explain a little bit what do you mean by haptic?
Yes, this is a good question. The haptic elements means that there are elements in the design thinking workshops that people can touch. Now, this is very important and interesting because different modes of interaction enable different modes of thinking. So sometimes it's very motivating for people to be able to touch something, and it changes their mode of thinking, so they can switch into a more creative mode of thinking. For some people, they have to talk about things to switch into this more creative mode of thinking. And in these design thinking workshops, by combining, for example, talking among persons and using these haptic elements, and I will show you what I mean. So when I talk about haptic elements, I mean exactly these figures that are printed out and cut. And when people touch them, it is really motivating and changes their mode of thinking. And then just by placing them on the table, it is possible to communicate about them. So people start to talk, and then you switch from one mode of thinking into another mode of thinking, and by this switching, you have a more creative capabilities. You unlock these creative capabilities. And you can also use, for example, pens to draw on these elements. So for example, you could have a tablet, and then one person could decide to write something on the tablet. Now, the current version of the tool, this would not be digitalized, but you could change attributes, as I mentioned. For example, if I demonstrated this, you can change attributes in the model corresponding to the what has happened in the reality. But thanks, good question.
Thanks a lot. And second question, you mentioned that this is a minimal technical setup of the table. Could you tell me how it could be expanded?
Yes, this is also very interesting to discuss, and I will switch the camera briefly again. It will take a moment. The table that you could see on the presentation beforehand was a very limited space. So generally, the space should enable creativity and enable iterations of design. So it would be beneficial to provide the users in the workshops, for example, with different boxes of figures. So you can sort the figures based on the domain. So one box could contain cars and transportation. The other one could contain backgrounds and houses. Another box could be about people, or it does not have to be a box. Maybe it is something else. This is one part where it's possible to be creative. Now, it's also possible to use two of these tables for two groups working next to each other. And because all of this is wireless and available through the network, so my laptop is not connected to anything, it's connected via WLAN to the Raspberry Pis doing the digitalization. You can have one table in one room, one table in another room, and import from both rooms, for example. Now, it's also very beneficial to have other elements, as I mentioned, that enable people to switch out of their thinking modes. So it's possible to use, for example, pens and post-it notes, and you should provide an environment that supports this. So generally, you would want a table like this of some sort in the middle where people could stand around. And then people should also have access to these figures, as I mentioned, that could be ordered in different ways. Then maybe on another place you have other creative means like pencils, like markers, like post-its, like different ropes to connect elements. It's also possible to draw on the tables if you put a piece of paper down so people can mark on the tables. And all of this should really help to create innovative results. Did I answer the question?
I don't see any more questions coming, so I wanted to thank you very, very much, Michel, for a great presentation. And to all of you, I wanted to invite you to stay tuned for our upcoming webinars and, of course, to participate in other DigiFof activities within the project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.